This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hi there, I hope you're well. I hope your week has gone better than mine. It's been a very trying week, a challenging week for me, hence the way I've actually put this episode together. This episode is a rerun of episode 100, a really popular episode on the podcast. It's an episode which has a large number of key takeaway messages from a number of guests. The messages focus on how you can develop your mental toughness, ideas to deal with difficult times, stress, adversity, dealing with trauma. Mental health is also discussed, as well as looking at health and fitness. There's some real top tips, and it's very, very inspiring to listen to. I hope you go on to enjoy the episode.
You do, and I think self-awareness is the big one. We all face, challenging times. I need to understand, and everybody needs to understand, what it is about them that causes them to hold back or to be confident about dealing with those challenges. And you can see, you can walk, you can't walk into a room anymore, but you can see people all around you responding in different ways. And the reason for that will be some aspect of their mental toughness. Some things stop people in their tracks, and the next person, that same thing doesn't seem to make a difference. We can explain that difference. We understand where it is. And if you can be self-aware, you stand a chance of doing something about it. If you're not self-aware, you've got very little chance.
Would be know yourself. And knowing yourself is then not beating yourself up because you're not one thing or the other. It's all shades of grey. So, yeah, we talk about mental toughness. Other end isn't weakness, it's sensitivity. Most people lie in the middle. So find out what you are and develop the other areas because it helps. A second point would be query and question all psychological models and interventions. Yeah, if they should have a strength in depth. To me, people should ask, show me the money, show me the research papers, because there's a difference between me trying to get guru status, which I'm nowhere near. Yeah, why does it work? Because Peter says it does. That's just poor science. We can disagree with how things are interpreted, but there should be a plethora of data and information and a willingness to talk about and challenge, because that's the important thing is I don't expect everybody to agree with me. Yeah, genuinely, there's no subtle message here. This is an idea. It works. It's quite effective. But yeah, some people don't like it. Some people do like it. Some people use it. Some people don't. And that's fine. And the third message, in these difficult times is, as a priority, you need to take care of yourself. But to take care of yourself, you need to know where the gaps are. But within that, it's all right to be the most mentally tough person in the world. There must be one by definition of any distributions, will be finding this really difficult. And the more mentally tough people can be very self-critical of themselves because they wake up in the morning, and I won't say the rude word on our podcast, but it goes through people's heads when look at the next bit of news. But that's normal. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is indestructible. Yeah, we've all got something to offer. But there is this mythology that the mentally tough people are bulletproof, and they ain't, either properly, physically, or psychologically. It can only take a certain amount of hits.
Exactly. If you're in a stressful position right now, or you have a bereavement or something like that, yeah, even if you're off the scale mentally tough, you're going to potentially have some tears and some tough days.
Yeah, and if people are struggling with the mental health, they need to seek advice. But for a mentally tough person, that would be more difficult to think about, because they've always prided themselves on being the mentally tough person. But yeah, it is about self-care. And a really mentally tough person is probably really comfortable with talking about the weaknesses, because you don't have to pretend. Because
One very good question. Three takeaways. So the first one there I would say would be based on that last point about making meaning in things, understanding that your story, your memories are your narrative on it. And ask yourself, are there other ways that I could have built that narrative? I think the second one would be that I would go to around the way that when we're present-minded, it's a feeling. And I think there's a real skill there in being able to try and transition from that sort of cognitive level of here's what's happening, which is normally rooted in the past or the future, into making that an affective state. It becomes more of a feeling, which means your feeling is present. Like it's hard to be not present when the thing that's kind of engulfing you at this moment is an affective domain, a feeling, an emotion. And the third one would probably be back to the first point I made, where it's easy to see people's behaviors through a motivational lens. And I think that's because we oversimplify what motivation is, and we sometimes see it as entirely controllable. Whereas motivation really requires a cognitive and an affective response to a situation, normally a pressurized situation. I think it's easy for us to have this misconception that motivation comes first and then action comes as a result of that motivation, because that's how we understand motivation. But it's a much more complicated cycle than that. And realistically, what we do is we respond to things, and then based on how we feel from that response, that changes our motivation to engage in those things again. And we kind of go through these cycles rather than this motivation that lead to action, sort of really simple approach to things. And for that exact reason, I'll always tell people that if you kind of want to do something, but you're struggling for motivation, just ask yourself, am I falling into this trap of thinking that action can't happen first? Thinking that always there has to be the motivation first. Sometimes you can have an action as a response, and then the motivation will follow.
I would. I don't want it to sound trite, and and it's difficult, isn't it, to give an answer. Here's 3 things you can do to make your life less stressful. I really do think it's worth remembering that even an elite athlete needs a rest day. They don't train 24/7. Everyone needs a break. Whatever you do, you need a break. And you like your body actually needs that break in order to continue to function. So give yourself a bloody break would be one piece of advice. And I know that's easier said than done for an awful lot of people who simply cannot take their foot off the throttle. So take a break, take a rest. I choose your environment. If you are not suited to this environment, then do yourself a favor. I like a bit of stress and pressure in my life. And so if I haven't got it, I probably create it. But a lot of people don't enjoy that. And therefore, they may be in the wrong environment and unsuited, maybe better suited in a different environment. So I think that's important. Just have a little bit of reflection. Is this doing it for me? And reflecting on the why, because a nurse may be doing it for vocational reasons, but she didn't ever sign up to work at this level. And this intensity, so really difficult for those guys. But yeah, be kinder to yourself. I run every day, David. I don't know. You probably do something every day. I have to do it because it keeps me sane. The benefits of me running cannot be underestimated. It's almost like my medication. I need to do it.
I'm exactly the same.
I hate banging on about exercise because it's all a bit boring, but it's so. I can't avoid the reality of it. It really does make a massive difference.
As well, actually, this time of year, when you've got 8 hours of daylight, a little bit more, even just getting outside for a walk, that's really helpful, isn't it? And in the daylight to top up your levels of vitamin D, and it just makes you feel a little bit more alive.
Yeah, you can't underestimate it. And you never regret going for a walk, do you? I never regret going for a run thinking I wish I hadn't done that. Never, not once.
No.
Even if I twist my ankle, I still, it's just got to be done. And I think this awful short days with the twilight in the morning and the twilight of blinking 4 o'clock. It does affect people's moods. So anything we can do for ourselves to help lift our mood, we need to do, because it's all hard enough right now.
And in a way that does link to what you mentioned about like reflecting on your environment. So if you're fortunate enough to be able to stretch your day out so you can have a walk or some exercise during the day, then yeah, I would agree. You've got to go for it. If you can adapt things in that way, it's vital.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people say, I'm too tired to go for a walk. Well, actually, the walk will probably give you the energy that your body's craving. So, it doesn't take energy from you. It restores it. And people, I think, forget that, yeah.
Oh, there's lots, and I've talked a lot about mental health and everything, but I think I'm very passionate about the goal setting. And I think a lot of your listeners will possibly be in the sports field. So setting goals and working towards them. So a lot of people ask me, how do you do that? So there's 3 principles I would say if you want to achieve. And that's what my why is to help people kind of experience the happiness and fulfillment of achieving their true life goals. So how do you achieve your true life goals? And that's different for everybody. It might be sport, it might be love, it might be educational, it might be money orientated. So how do you find out what that is? The first thing you've got to do is visualization. Get a vision. What is it that you want? Find out what your why is. What is it that what makes you happy? What is your goal? What is your opportunity? What is your love? What is your desire, your dream? As I would call it, this is how you find your gold. You've got to find out what your vision is. So find out what that is. That's the first thing you've got to do. Second thing, once you found out what that is, benchmark it. You've got to benchmark it as soon as possible. I mentioned about that with getting my legs straight. If you want to lose weight, weigh yourself today, and then you can start losing weight. If you want to get faster, how fast are you now? If you want to earn more money, what's your bank account reading now, today? Benchmark it, then you can start recording your progress. Now, the third thing that you've got to do after you've done the vision and the benchmarking is take action. Of course, got to take action. You can't be all talk. You've got to start doing something. And all of these expand out, of course, to do. But you've got to start thinking about what you can do rather than what you can't do. What are you going to do to increase that benchmark, to get that benchmark moving? What action are you going to take today? And sometimes action can be doing research. Absolutely. Sit down in front of the computer and start doing some research. That is taking action. But eventually you're going to have to do something a bit more physical than that, I'm thinking. So make a plan for that. But when I talk about the plan, that's going off another one. The 3 ones are vision, benchmarking, and action.
Well, first of all, that there is a solution. And doesn't have to abandon his career, because his career and his sport is his life. It's his identity. And we have to make sure we do everything we can do for the athletes to continue his passion. So there are strategies. There are strategies like more the one of mainstream sports psychologists, like visualization, self-talk, addressing the negative feelings, cognitive restructuring. Definitely there are relaxation, all this kind of stuff. And if the problem is in the past, there are reprocessing techniques that we can definitely, like brain spotting, for instance, that we can definitely apply in order to overcome the past and leave the past into the past and be free in the present and look with hope in the future, because the future is really about what we construct in the here and now, And another important thing is really, and having said that, it's important to be able to assess the subcortical part of the brain, not just the neocortex where the logical thoughts resides, but is really about assessing, the deep instinctive part of the brain, subcortex. And another thing is that I want to mention, maybe is related to also this existential trauma of the COVID, is to be compassionate towards ourselves in terms of performance, because we are experiencing losses on a different level, maybe hours and hours of really hard training, and we can't go to the Olympic. Some fears about gaining weight or losing fitness related to not being able to train as we want to. Some connections with the brain might feel a bit overloaded with all the stuff going on. So we might not perform as well as we used to before the trauma. But as I said, we can expand, we can definitely process the emotional charge, and we can go, especially when you do a post-traumatic growth, you can go beyond the level you were when the issue started. You can even expand more your skills, your abilities, your view, your capacity, your resilience. So there is definitely hope in that. And be compassionate is not about self-pity. It's about understanding human nature. It's about not being perfect all the time, but learn from what we do wrong, but having the drive and the courage to pursue your goal. So that is really what I wish to athletes in the future.
Okay, so I think given my experience with sports people and mental health, I think the 3 take-homes would have to be the importance of balance. You know, it's when I see these extremes that I tend to see the mental health presentation. So, you know, as you referenced earlier, the importance of rest, the importance of recovery days, that's both physically and mentally. So the importance of balance. But also in our discussion, we've spoke about the importance of connecting with vulnerability. I think this is just one of the greatest assets that we can all have. You know, what are our trigger points? We do this in physical health. You know, we have physios looking at our athletes to say, what are their physical vulnerabilities? Where is the imbalance in strength? Where is the physical injury concern or point of vulnerability? And I think that we're missing something here with psychology and mental health, that we should be doing the same with our athletes with regard to their psychology. So what are their points of vulnerability? You know, you referenced earlier, do they have an overly critical or punitive narrative towards themselves? And if that is the case, then we need to recognise that. We need to increase insight into that. And we need to support the athlete to start to question that at times. So was it helpful for me to be critical at that point? Was I overly critical? Am I taking this too far now? Do I need to be compassionate towards myself at this point? Because actually that's quite unhelpful. So I think the importance of connecting with vulnerability and recognising those trigger points. And then finally, the last one, you're making me think. The last one, I think the importance of identifying when some of these helpful character traits bubble over into something more distressing or concerning, and the importance of keeping an eye on that, because we know that we need these character traits. We need to be obsessive. We need to be a bit masochistic. We need to be a bit aggressive in high performance sport. But it's keeping an eye on that and making sure that they don't bubble over into something that starts to cause distress or impact upon our personal lives, relationships, jobs for some high performance athletes. And if that is the case, then recognising when you might need to see a professional about that. So either myself for mental health concerns or yourself to identify strategies to be proactive about managing that. So
I suggest like figuring out the types of fatigue that they're susceptible to. And we've talked about that at the top of the show, you know, so what makes them tired. And then looking at, again, I go back to that recovery pyramid and say, you know, what are the interventions that you're currently looking at? Is your nutrition on point? Is your sleep on point? Have you got things that you do to manage your body effectively, flexibility, mobility? Are you taking care of those basics? Have you got a program? So I'd look at those first 2 levels on the recovery pyramid and, you know, understand what type of fatigue you've got, and then are you doing anything to combat that? And then I would, you know, recommend putting together some sort of monitoring over a short period. I'm always surprised at how many athletes don't have a training diary and don't record just very simply how they're feeling from day to day. So, you know, record what they're doing, track what they're doing, and then create almost like a menu and that point system that I talked about before, where you say, right, okay, I'm going to get 5 points from my nutrition. I'm going to get 10 points from my sort of actual recovery interventions, and develop the points each day. This is something I've done with athletes, is each day hit 20 points. And then you can see on days where they maybe got 10 or 15, well, what were the barriers then? So it's really just encouraging athletes to understand fatigue, understand the strategies they can put in place, and then actually reflect on, well, what am I putting in place and how does that then make me feel? So that you can actually drill down into what's effective rather than just, I'm going to put some compression tights on, eat a protein bar, and I don't know, wear some blue light goggles and that'll make me feel amazing.
Yeah, well, from this conversation in particular, yeah, look, some people are popular, some people aren't. Some people are accepted, some people aren't. Some people are confident about being different. Do you know what? Every single one of you is worth something. And if you're put in a position, don't get anxiety over the fact that you're not allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to make mistakes. You are, okay? That's how you learn. But if you feel lonely or anxious, talk to people, yeah? Even if you can't turn to someone that's close to you, just find somebody that is not close to you that you know. Obviously, make sure it's someone you know and trust, or reach out, The minute you open your mouth and start talking about how you feel is the minute half your problems disappear. So I suppose that would be one of them. I think another one is to be kind. There's you don't know what someone's going through. I used to walk down the streets off my head on cocaine, looking at the person on the streets thinking, God, look at him, he's a drunk. Whilst I had cocaine in my nose, yeah? I mean, the irony is just unbelievable, Doesn't matter if someone's got more or less than you. What matters is how you treat them and how they treat you, yeah? And just giving someone 5 minutes of your time to change their life, or change their day at least. So no matter what, be nice to everybody, because if someone's not nice to you, you know how it feels. And I suppose the last thing is that one of the biggest problems I found with myself growing up is I never met my expectations. So I was brought up in a way that I had to be better than I was. That was an expectation put on me by certain members that were close to me. Do you know something? You're good enough as you are. As long as you know inside you've done your best. Don't give up. Do your best. But if you don't reach exactly where you want to be, but you know you've done the best, give yourself a break, because you did a good job and you can always come back. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Do what you can, do it to the best of your ability, and be satisfied with that.
So I would definitely say that the culture of sport is not always what we think. There's a lot of, I guess, detaching of stigmas that we need to do, and it's going to take us having more conversations like this, listening to more athletes. So definitely detaching those stigmas, such as mental health and inequality, and that's the mission I'm on. I would also say it's important to stay in the moment, and enjoy those moments, because they can't, they're very easy. When you're thinking too far ahead or you're stuck in the past, you forget to enjoy the present. And actually there's a lot in that, being present and grounding and finding peace, that will help you get to where you're trying to go. And surround yourself with great people, just kind, supportive, awesome people, because that is what will keep you going and sustain you on this journey called life.
That's a lovely way to end that.
I think it is the first one. It's just recognizing that besides God, if you believe in God, the most important person you're ever actually going to talk to is yourself. We all create a story, a narrative in our mind. Well, how about making it a good story and an empowering story, and being more mindful and aware of those kind of conversations, and asking yourself the question, hang on a minute, who's in charge, the thinker or the thought? Well, it's the thinker. So you can influence your thoughts. So I'd say that's a big one. I think secondly, I'd actually just get people to recognize that we are all human. We're not machines. And even the person who intimidates you or impresses you the most still has their struggles, their self-doubts, their stories, and recognize that. It's just that some people are better at hiding it than others. So recognize we've all got our our struggles and self-doubts at times. And perhaps the third one, I guess, maybe relates to your last question, is that mates matter massively. And we are never going to achieve what we want to achieve alone, whether it's someone giving you a break because they believed in you, like with me, Jacqueline, or because of my mate, Paul Sandham, who's been a lot of different things to me when I've needed it. We do not journey alone, and we need the support of others. And sometimes that's very direct support. It's one-to-one. It might be face-to-face, or in this world at the moment, virtual. But, sometimes you could get support from people who you never know and you never meet, but you learn from them through a podcast or through reading a book or watching a video on YouTube. So you don't do it alone.
Right. Well, first thing is to recognize that you'll have your own opinion and perspective and bias on this subject, and that might be shaped by personal experience. It might be shaped by a lack of personal experience around stress and mental health, because many of us don't necessarily believe it's real until it comes close to home. But despite that, just stop and accept at least that there is a lot of evidence out there. There's a growing wealth of evidence that says that engaged employees are predominantly, they're happy at work, but they're also well at work. And a mentally well workplace, a workplace where it's mentally well, it's not just morally right, but it's great for business. And you may not be convinced, but please accept that there's a lot of evidence out there and start the process of looking into that, if nothing else, because it will be one of the best things you can do, in my view. And the other takeaways, I guess, are start to look at what is your culture like within an organization, and how can we shift that culture to something that is supportive, not afraid to be having these conversations. And I guess with that, let's equip our staff, particularly our managers, with the tools to have conversations. And I mean managers at all levels, not just that team leader level, but all the way through, to have conversations that are empowering, supportive, and can signpost to the right people. Because it's not about turning managers into the office psychiatrists or psychologists. It's about just equipping them tools to have a conversation and then direct somebody to the support that they need. And they're kind of the three key takeaways, I'd say. If you start on those, if you haven't already, you're well on your way to creating a success with well-being culture.
Yeah, I think embracing fear is something extremely powerful. If we learn to embrace fear, see it as false evidence appearing real, and we use that as a fuel, as a platform, we can go on and achieve great things, because fear cripples us, can cripple us if we allow it to. Fear can get in the way of everything that we do. If we listen to the wrong voices, if we listen to the wrong things, if we listen to the things on the media and news, if we allow fear to become all-consuming, it will stop us growing and reaching our full potential. So that one of the takeaways would be to use fear, to see it as, recognize it, it's there, it's not going to go away, but overcome it by using it, by speaking at it, by embracing that and saying, right, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use you, and I'm going to harness you, and I'm going to take and turn that around and use that for my benefit. It's going to move me forward. So that will be one of the takeaways, would be embrace that fear, because I was consumed with fear, but I allowed it and I used it to push me on and drive me to start new things and do new things. And the more I've done that, the less fear I have. When fear comes, I almost laugh at it, because I know it's there to challenge me and help me move forward. It's an aid to go on and do something great. Another takeaway would be get the right people around you. Get people that have maybe walked this journey already to counsel you, to be accountable to talk to. When men and women have gone through stuff in their life, they have life experience. They have answers to situations, solutions to situations that you may face or you may be facing. So surrounding yourself by a great council of wise people, great leaders, men and women. I'm not talking great leaders that we have to then start to go after politicians and those that we know, recognize as leaders, but those locally, maybe those people that we recognize that have worn and got those battle scars, that have gone through so much that we can learn from. And it's to just ask questions, just absorb, just to be in their presence, to put yourself out and go and meet up with them, be bold, be courageous in reaching out and saying, I want to know more about your journey. I want to have lunch with you. I want to have dinner with you. I want to go out for a drink with you to find out more about this and that. You've written a book. I want to come and talk to you about your book. And you'll be surprised. The response is that, yeah, I'd love you to come. Because in essence, when people write books to aid others and to help others develop, it's because they have a message they want to convey. They have gone through stuff themselves, and they want to add value to your life, and they want to share what they've gone through and to see that impact you. So I think when you put yourself out, when you make those calls or you send those emails to people that you possibly couldn't even imagine getting in front of, the response is amazing. And I reached out to a chap I heard on a high performance podcast, because I really resonated and connected with me about his story, about what he's doing. And I said, right, he may be slightly famous, but I don't care. I don't see that as an issue. I want to get to know the real person. I want to get to know their story. I want to hear what they've gone through. I want to understand it, because I want to know how I can get better at what I do, because they've already achieved that. I want to learn.
Wow. Was that 3 takeaways?
3 takeaways, sorry.
Sorry. 3 there.
Sorry, David. The last takeaway, be yourself. Be true to yourself. I think it took me a long time to get to that place of knowing who I was, being happy in my own skin. I suppose constantly looking for affirmation for the early part of my career, doing things that I shouldn't have done to get acknowledged, to get seen, to get recognized, building up a business by cheating and by going around it the wrong way, by being someone I wasn't, by trying to be different people, really got me into a sticky place, which I've briefly touched upon. So the importance of being true to yourself, knowing your identity, knowing who you are, who you're created to be, knowing that what you stand for, knowing what's important in your life, will all come together under that one thing of being true to yourself. And it doesn't matter if people don't like you, sod them, who cares? It's not for someone, it's their issues. If they don't like you because you've been yourself, then that's their issues, their problem. They have to deal with it. I think so often we try and appease, we try and adapt ourselves, we try and adapt our personality to fit in with the environment that we're in. But actually, stuff that. If the environment is different and it doesn't fit with you, don't go and try and be someone you're not. Don't try and fit in round peg, square hole, whatever it is. Don't try and be someone you're not. Be authentic. Authenticity is incredibly important. And that doesn't mean it doesn't matter if people don't agree with what you stand for. We will have different beliefs. We will have different opinions. And I think the shallow-minded will exclude you, will delete you, will mute you, will defriend you. But I think get yourself, surround yourself with people of different opinions. Learn, keep learning. Be true to yourself.
I think even since we've been talking, I just sort of thought a little bit about it. And I think how you spend your time is so critically important, and what you spend your time on. And where I come from that is we develop a skill set to deliver our roles day to day. We identify a little gap in our skill sets that we want to develop, but how much time are we spending actually on ourselves to develop as well? I think the second one is the self-development piece and recognizing a passion for it and having a purpose. It just doesn't happen. You've got to be really, really intentional. And you've got to work hard at yourself. And the third one for me is, I think I might have mentioned it just before, but if you don't know where to start, then seek out a coach or a mentor to help you with it. And we're not talking about the old adage of a shrink or anything like that. We're talking about someone to just pose questions and ask questions and help you uncover. And sometimes that's all it needs, someone just to ask the right questions and then create space to then think for yourself about it.
I think there's an element of thinking about your own journey and where you've come from. Focus on you, don't focus on other people. And I think that's where it's useful to have a coach or a mentor, whether it's in life or when you're learning a new sport or a new skill. It's somebody who can look at things objectively, that gets away from the emotion and can remind you, well, actually, don't you remember, this is what you were doing a year ago, last week, or whenever it is. And you go, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I've forgotten about that. Maybe I have come a bit further than I thought. So it's having those two things, because even having the skills I have now, I still work with coaches, whether it's through business and certainly snowboarding. I've had people say to me, well, you can snowboard, why do you still have lessons? I'm going, well, it's not really a lesson. Would you say to a top tennis player, oh, well, you don't need lessons anymore, So it's that dynamic, and people don't always understand or get that.
Yeah, it's funny because I play a lot of golf, and when I look around, it's with youngsters who are trying to get better, it seems to be a given where they'll work alongside a coach. But then when you get to the club level as an amateur, some people can frown upon the fact that you're going to work alongside a coach, which is absolutely crazy because it fast tracks your way to success.
Absolutely. I would always, and I think it's easy. The other thing is, I think unless you have a coach, it's easy to get into bad habits. And it can be bad habits, physical bad habits, when you learn, like with snowboarding. And I know what some of my bad habits are, and I need somebody to remind me, pull that leading shoulder over your front edge. And, but equally we get into habits of thought as well, where, you can, and that translates then into your performance.
Oh, that's a good question. And it's difficult. ACT is really cool. Read the book, and no, seriously, it's if you do want to get interested in ACT, I would read the book and do the exercises. We tried to make our book fairly practical, and ACT is practical, it's experiential. Or if you read another book, or if you go to a workshop, do the exercises. Just fully commit to it, and it does make a change. I think a lot of people are interested in ACT because it fits with their experience of life. And I think that it is very interesting. It's quite challenging. Heart is simple.
Completely agree. I've practiced it on and off for a number of years, and I've seen a big shift and noticed how helpful it is. And in your book, like you say, you've got a number of exercises there. It's pretty straightforward to follow.
And it's becoming much more popular in the sports area. Very popular. And I know it is in Britain and certainly in the States. I've heard Steve Hayes has told me that it's quite a big thing in the States now.
Yeah, I think we've talked about there the tracking of the progress. So I think what people, if you're wanting to feel better about yourself, obviously you're not happy where you currently are. You don't look how you look. Perhaps you don't like how you feel. At that point, nobody wants to reference that. Draw attention to that. They don't want to step in front of a mirror. They don't want to take progress pictures. They don't want to step on the scales because they're like, well, why would I want to make a big deal of how terrible I look right now or whatever in their own view? But the problem if they don't is that they therefore have nothing to mark their progress against. So it's really important, I think, that you mark where you're starting, even if it was just if the physical element of it was a huge problem and a huge barrier. Well, what are your energy levels like? What's your mood like? What's your motivation? At least get some scores on paper for that, so you've got something to compare to, because so often you'll have conversations with people that say they're not getting any, I'm not losing weight, I'm not getting any fitter, or whatever it might be. And you say, well, are you measuring? Well, no. Well, how do you know? How do you know that you've not lost weight? How do you know that you haven't, So I think encouraging people to track that progress, and then throughout the process, continue to do it. Even, maybe after 2 weeks, you're not feeling great, do it anyway. Just consistently measure and then get back to what you're doing and just kind of focus on that element of the habits, the daily things you need to do. It is really important. And then I think a big one is not just focusing on physique, it's focusing on performance. So I think everybody should be lifting weights and, doing some form of resistance training in some form, just even if it's, it might just be body weight stuff, but we should all be trying to build strength and maintain strength just because it's so good for us in terms of our confidence, in terms of our health, in terms of as we age. So often with clients, their fat loss might be a goal, but suddenly they just love the feeling of getting stronger. you can see their posture starts to improve because of the exercises they're doing, but also just because I'm feeling better about myself here. You know, I can feel like I'm squatting a weight now that I didn't used to think I could, and all of these things, I can run further than I used to be able to. So focusing on what your body can do, not just how it looks, I think is a big one. And then, we've talked a lot about that kind of process, not outcome, and actually enjoying the journey, which is something you hear a lot, isn't it? But I think having a purpose and having a goal is huge, and then seeing progress towards that is just the best feeling. You know, being a part of something that means something to you, and, you know, doing it every day on the days you don't want to, but still doing it and seeing the progress, that is such a good feeling that we all need in our lives and whatever it is we care about. And I think people can tap into that for their health and performance. I think that's huge.
And by tracking the numbers and continuing to track the numbers, it all links in there with it, doesn't it? That feeling of confidence and motivation when you do see the 1 kilo drop off, then the next 1 kilo, it all sort of nicely ties in together.
And clothes is a big one. You know, suddenly they'll be like, God, these jeans used to be tight and now I can fit. Clothes is a brilliant one of seeing you, because it's more of a long-term thing. You know, you suddenly then, a few months down the line, you put on a pair of jeans and like, wow, these felt tight and now they feel great or whatever. So, it doesn't have to be numbers, but it's still reference points along the way. And I think something I was going to mention on this, which I think is really important as well, is, you know, I was mentioning about the reality of people's, you know, expectations. I used to do some work with a supplement company a few years ago, and I remember going to one of the big expos and seeing all these people in the flesh that I used to see on the magazines. And I remember like going into men's toilets, and there was this guy stood like washing his hands, and I was like, that's the guy off the magazine. I follow this guy on social media, and I had this image of him as being this big, solid, muscular guy with this tiny waist, and just a guy that would have a presence if you saw him. And he was washing his hands. He was quite a small guy, and I was like, what the hell? And it made me realize there were so many people like that who, when they'd photograph them, it's all angles. It's all creating the impression of this person looking a certain way. And I think I can't claim this quote as my own, but I think it was from Phil Learney, who's a top sort of PT, and said, stop trying to look like the people on the magazines, because they don't look like that either. For a start, you know, somebody will get in great shape, often for a magazine shoot. They'll get a load of pictures done over maybe a few days, and then they'll relax their diet a little bit and they'll put on a bit of weight, and they'll, you know, as we all would, very few people look in peak condition all year round. And then they'll put those images out on the social media all year round, but they don't look like that. And the same goes for that person who's in that image. You know, they're oiled up, they've got their lighting perfect, they've got their posture perfect. And then if they bent over and just slouched, they wouldn't look like that anymore. And I think it's accepting that, you know, if you suddenly see that picture of yourself at a party and you're like, oh, I hate how I look. That was just a moment in time. That doesn't mean how you know what I mean? It's kind of like if you were to change your angle, so just kind of lifting the bonnet a little bit on the reality of the fitness industry and media, you know, and that's very much the case across the board. People will look a certain way, but if you saw them out of context, in different clothes and different lighting at different times of the year, they probably wouldn't look like that. So stop putting unnecessary pressure on yourself to look like that as well, you know?
Well, I think we touched on before, it's not just a physical thing. It is very much a physical thing, but it's not just a physical thing. It's a lot of it up there, and it does clear your head, and try not to put too much pressure on yourself as well. Try and keep it fun. Try and enjoy it. The 3 E's: embrace it, endure it, but enjoy it. Definitely 3 E's. And part run, again, best thing that's ever happened to running. And I include the North Run and London Marathon in that. It's got people of all ages, shapes and sizes and abilities. And I know people are suffering because that's not on at the moment. I've spoken to people. Oh, I miss it. You can tell. Oh, I miss parkrun terrible. And you can just tell that they haven't got that spark when the last time I saw them, because they're not getting the weekly fix. And again, it's more than running parkrun. It's a social thing, and you go and have a spot of breakfast afterwards, maybe, or a drink. Yeah, I can't speak high enough of parkrun, which is good for anyone who's going to start running. Man, I wouldn't go out and tell anyone start a run streak. And I coach kids. There's no way I would tell kids to do a run streak. You do need. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but you do actually need. I can't even say the word. It's REST. ST, you do need it. All the top athletes will tell you that. I know that. Yeah, my days are like just a gentle 5K, but I'm still putting weight on through the joints. I'm still not having that R word. So there's no way I would tell kids to start a run streak ever. It's not right. But I do appreciate people who are doing run streaks.
If you're going to go into any sort of health journey, you've got to be consistent. And the only way to create consistency is to follow something that is sustainable to you. So don't go into a fad diet. Don't go into an intense training program. Don't follow somebody who is unrealistic to your goals and your lifestyle, because that is not consistency. And if you can't be consistent, you'll never get to where you want to be, because health and fitness is it's a long game, and it's patience, and it's frustrating. But if you can create something that's sustainable and realistic to you and your lifestyle, the consistency will come, and it will be a lot more natural, which means you'll be able to do it for longer and get those results and long-lasting results because of that. So that's one.
I like that. I think that's brilliant. Regardless of whether it's health or fitness, I think that's sort of life in general, work, business, sport, whatever. It's very easy, especially today, to get distracted and reactive and I suppose chase the latest shiny thing.
Yeah, and on that note, we can only control so many things. So if we take the situation that's going on in the world right now with the global pandemic, we can't control that. We can only control how we react to it. So bringing it back to health and fitness, you can control what goes in your mouth. You can control what movement and how much movement you do every single day. And you can control how you think about yourself and your goal. And no matter what happens in the world, you will always be in control of those three things. And those three things are the only things that you need to get what you want in terms of health and fitness.
I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this episode and you picked up some nice little takeaways there and some hints to be able to help you. Next week you can expect another episode which is very, very similar, and I'll likely elaborate on why I've taken this choice to go down this route. As I alluded to earlier at the start of the episode, it's been a really, really trying and testing week for myself. So yeah, I'll share a little bit more next week. After next week's episode, we'll go back where we investigate ChatGPT and the question, what can I expect when working with a sports psychologist? Take care.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.